My daughter threw hot coffee at me when I refused to give my credit card to her son. She screamed, "Pay or leave." So I walked away silently. Days later, she returned to find the house empty and a lawyer waiting inside. If I had known that one cup of coffee could wash away 67 years of dignity, I would never have stepped into my daughter's kitchen that morning. The sun was pouring through the wide windows of Rachel's Santa Fe home, painting the tiled floor in golden squares. I sat quietly at the breakfast table, my hip aching a little as I shifted in the chair, my hands cradled a warm mug, steam curling toward my face for a moment. I thought the day might be peaceful. Rachel had brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to peel the paint off the walls just the way her husband used to like it before he left. She poured herself a cup, silent, her eyes glued to her phone across the table. My grandson, Ethan, scrolled on his gaming device, hardly looking up, then as casually as if he were asking me to pass the butter. He said, "Grandma, can I borrow your credit card again? I need something for my setup. It's only $5,000. My fingers tightened around the mug, but I didn't flinch. I simply said, "No, Ethan." The word hung in the air like a snapped string. He blinked once, shrugged and went back to his screen. But Rachel's head lifted slowly, her eyes narrowing. The silence that followed was not ordinary silence. It was thick, poisonous, the kind that crawls across your skin before you realize it is danger. And then it happened. Rachel didn't yell, she didn't argue. Instead, her hand moved with sudden precision. She reached for my mug and tipped it straight into my lap. The coffee was scalding, soaking through my thin pajama pants, burning my thighs. I gasped, jerking back, the mug shattering on the tile floor with a sharp crack. I stumbled to my feet, heart pounding. My breath caught in my throat. Rachel didn't even blink. She folded her arms, her expression as cold as a banker, denying a loan. "If you're going to be selfish, then maybe it's time you leave. Either give Ethan what he needs, or be out of here by the end of the day. We're not running a charity, Mom, charity." That word landed heavier than the coffee. I stood there, dripping, burned and silent. My eyes locked on hers for the briefest flicker. I thought I saw guilt cross her face. But no, it wasn't guilt. It was calculation. She was measuring me, weighing me, deciding whether I was worth the space I occupied. $5,000, I repeated softly, my voice trembling but calm for a child to buy gadgets. Rachel's lips curled. "It's not a big deal. You've got money. You've been sitting on it ever since Dad died. I don't know why you're being so difficult." Behind her, Ethan barely looked up, still waiting, still expecting the card. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a paper towel and dabbed at my lap. No one moved to help me. That was the moment I understood this wasn't my daughter anymore. This was someone who saw me not as her mother, but as a resource, and she was done pretending otherwise. I closed the kitchen door behind me without a sound, carrying the sting of hot coffee on my skin and something sharper in my chest. My guest room at the end of the hall felt colder than usual, the curtains still drawn. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening to the muted hum of the television in the living room. Rachel had already returned to her routine, as if nothing had happened. The suitcase was still on the top shelf of the closet, dusty but waiting. I reached up carefully, my hip groaning at the strain, and pulled it down. The smell of old cedar rose up, familiar and oddly comforting. I spread it open on the bed and began folding clothes with steady hands. Every movement hurt, but the ache in my bones was nothing compared to the ache in my spirit. I reached for my purse on the nightstand, planning to tuck away my wallet and medication. That was when the first real shock hit. The wallet was gone. I checked the front pocket, then the side zippers, even the lining empty. No ID, no bank card. My breath came faster as I dumped the bag onto the bed, outspilled tissues, peppermints, and old lipstick, but not the thing that mattered most. I had it yesterday. I remembered buying ointment for my hip at the pharmacy. Rachel had insisted on carrying my bag for me while I limped slowly down the aisle. At the time, I thought it was kindness. Now I saw it for what it was: opportunity. My throat went dry. She hadn't just asked me for money. She had already taken it. I staggered toward the dresser and opened the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of folded linens, I found an envelope I had hidden months ago. I had forgotten about it until this moment. Inside were copies of my birth certificate, old bank routing numbers, and a few notes in my handwriting. Some part of me deep down must have always known this day would come. I sat back on the bed staring at the papers. The realization was bitter and cold. Rachel hadn't been helping me. She had been managing me right out of my own independence, step by step, until I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. My gaze fell on the framed photograph on the dresser, Rachel at her college graduation. My arm around her shoulder, pride radiating from my smile, I remembered how hopeful I had been that day. Now looking at her smug grin, frozen in time, I felt only grief. I picked up the phone and scrolled until I found the number I had not called in months. David Mercer, retired attorney, former neighbor, a man who once said I could call him anytime. My thumb hovered, then pressed Ruth. His voice came warm on the second ring. "No," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt, "but it will be." David arrived less than an hour later. I heard the soft crunch of his tires on the gravel driveway, the sound muffled by the walls that had stopped feeling like home long ago. He knocked once, firmly but gently, the way someone does when they don't want to startle you. When I opened the door, suitcase in hand, his eyes fell on the faint red blotches still staining my pajama pants. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Instead, he reached for the handle of my suitcase and said, "Let me carry that." I walked past the living room where Rachel sat cross-legged on the couch, a home renovation show flickering on the screen. Ethan was still slouched in his chair, headphones on his face, lit by the glow of his game. Neither of them looked up. Neither of them tried to stop me. The front door clicked shut behind me, not slammed, not locked, just closed for me. It was louder than any scream. We drove through Santa Fe in silence. At first, adobe walls glowed in the midday sun, their soft reds and oranges reminding me of fire and clay. I remembered walking these streets with Cliff, my late husband, decades ago, when life still felt wide open. Now, every block we passed seemed like another stitch cut loose from the life Rachel had tried to bind me into. Finally, David spoke, "You're safe. Now we'll figure out the rest." I nodded, unable to speak.